All right, so we are going to be working on histograms. We have finished our information about dot plots, and we're going to take this information and apply it to a different type of representation of data, and that is called a histogram. So here is a histogram that shows some dog weights in pounds. Each bar includes the left end value, so like for this one it's 60, but not the right end value. So for example, the first bar includes dogs that weigh 60 pounds and 68 pounds, but not 80 pounds. An 80-pound dog would be included in the second bar with a frequency of 11. So use the histogram to answer these questions. So I'm going to give you guys some time to work independently, and then we will come back together and share as a class. All right, so looking around at some of the groups, these are some of the answers that you could have gotten from this histogram. And so they're very similar to bar graphs, and I noticed that some of you pointed that out. And some of you also noticed that a couple of the questions can't be answered using a histogram. And so number 2, it says if you used a dot plot to answer the same 5 questions you just answered, how would the answers be different? So take some time to talk to your groups about that and focus on these can answer questions. Could those be answered with a dot plot? All right, so coming back together, we have another dot plot, and today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of the representations of dot plots and histograms, like we previously mentioned in that previous question. So the United States performs a census every year, and if you notice, these are all grouped together. Can we see individual dots? No, we can't. So because of that, this might not be the best representation of that data. So we're going to keep that in mind as we answer these questions. So you're going to take some time and work with your group. We're focusing on using the dot plot, okay, because we haven't moved on to the histogram yet. So you're going to answer these questions with your group. All right, so after working with your group, you will have noticed that only one of these questions was really easy to answer using the dot plot. So we're going to create a histogram using the same information, but with a histogram to answer these questions. So we'll be back to review these, but we're going to make the histogram first. So on the next page here, we have all of that consensus data, and we are going to complete this frequency table with this data. So for example, Alabama is a population of 4.78 million. So that would go here. I'm just going to do a tally, and then I'm going to check it off. And I'm going to work my way through this data to create my frequency table. You're going to do this independently or with your group, whatever you prefer, but you have 3 minutes. Okay, so working with your groups, you should have got a frequency table like this. And now we're going to use this information to create our histogram. So I want to make sure we walk through it together, noticing that they are similar to bar graphs, but a little bit different. So between 0 and 5, there were 29 states or the District of Columbia. So between 0 and 5, we're going to go up to 29, which is halfway between 28 and 30. And then we're going to shade this in. This is the first part of our histogram. We're going to continue, and it's going to be a bar graph with no gaps. So these bars are going to be connected unless there's nothing for that section. So let's go ahead and take some time to work with your groups to finish this histogram. All right, so now we have a finished histogram, and we're going to go back to those questions from the dot plot as well. So I want you to review these now with your group, and now you're filling in the histogram section. So using this histogram with the same information from this dot plot, are these questions easier to answer? All right, so I went around and heard some of the groups. A lot of you realized that using the histogram to represent this type of data for a census was a lot easier to answer these questions, and that is the main goal. So if you guys could flip to the lesson summary, the point of this lesson was to, one, know how to create a histogram with a data set, but also understand that sometimes it's better to have a histogram to represent the data than a dot plot. And that concludes all the new information from our lesson today. I'm going to go ahead and pass out those cool downs. If you have any questions, make sure you raise your hand. If not, we'll get started.